The criticism of not being scientific, often associated with the concept of pseudoscience, involves an analysis of practices or opinions that present themselves as scientific but do not follow the rigor of the scientific method. This criticism emphasizes the importance of falsifiability. That is, the ability of a scientific theory to be tested and refuted through empirical evidence. Imagine that you have an idea about how the world works. For this idea to be considered scientific, it needs to meet a very important criterion: falsifiability. What is falsifiability? Think of falsifiability as the possibility of proving that a theory is wrong. In other words, a scientific theory needs to be constructed in such a way that it is possible, in principle, to find evidence that contradicts it. If a theory cannot be disproved by any observation or experiment, then it cannot be tested and, therefore, is not considered scientific in the traditional sense. Why is this a problem for Jung? Carl Jung developed very deep and complex concepts such as collective unconscious, a layer of the mind that would be shared by all humanity, containing universal experiences and images; archetypes, innate and universal patterns of thought and behavior, such as the mother, the hero, the wise old man, which manifest themselves in myths, dreams, and cultural symbols. The great challenge with these concepts is that they are very difficult to measure, observe directly, or test in a laboratory. Let's take a practical example. If a scientist in the field of physics proposes that every object thrown upwards will fall due to gravity, it is easy to test this. Just throw several objects upwards and see if they fall. If one day an object does not fall, the theory of gravity, at least this part of it, would be falsified. Now, how do you empirically test the shadow archetype, or the presence of the collective unconscious in someone? You can't touch them. They are not physical objects. You can't measure them with instruments. There is no such thing as an unconsciousometer or an archetypometer. Manifestations are interpretive. When a patient dreams of a dragon, Jung could interpret this as the manifestation of an archetype. However, it is difficult for an outside scientist to test whether this interpretation is the only possible one, or whether the dragon is really a manifestation of a universal archetype, and not just a personal symbol or a coincidence. The charge of unscientific. Because of this difficulty in testing and, more importantly, in falsifying his concepts, many critics, especially those with a more natural science and empirical method mindset, argue that Jung's theories do not fit the standards of traditional science. They see Jung's ideas more as a system of philosophical beliefs, symbolic interpretations, or even a form of spirituality, than as propositions that can be proven or disproved through controlled experiments and observations. The criticism of unfalsifiability means that although Jung's ideas are fascinating and influential, they are so broad and difficult to pin down that they are resistant to verification or refutation by conventional scientific methods. This does not mean that they are wrong, but rather that their nature takes them away from the realm of empirical science and closer to the realm of interpretation and speculation.
The Virtual Books Publishing team thanks for your visit. If you liked our channel, please subscribe and share.